Good morning. It's a lovely morning, or I should say another lovely morning. It's only a half-day tour, but I'm sure you will enjoy it. And before I give you any other information about the visits today, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Angela, and we will be together for the next maybe 4 hours. So what we will be doing is very shortly, we will arrive at the first ancient site that we are to visit today. It's known as the Tombs of the Kings, and this ancient site is included in the list of cultural heritage of UNESCO. So arriving there, we usually do something like 50 minutes, a bit less than 1 hour. We go together, we visit what we have to visit, and then you have a few extra minutes on your own to explore the place and take photos. There are facilities there if you wish to use them. And then back on the bus, and we drive another 10 minutes away. We go towards the picturesque harbor of Pathos, where the archaeological park is situated there, which is one of the most important ancient sites, again included in the list of cultural heritage of UNESCO. And we go together to visit the beautiful mosaics at the house of Pathos, and then the house of Dionysus, or Dionysos in Greek. Of course, it's just names now. When we arrive there, I will be giving you all the necessary information, and again, you will have free time, as much free time as you like, or after we are done with the visit together, you may choose to come out from the site and walk as far as the castle to take photos. You might choose to sit and enjoy a cup of coffee or an ice cream. And then, of course, we will know the time to get back on the bus for the return journey.
The tombs of the kings, ladies and gentlemen. Only, I will disappoint you a little bit, because kings were never buried here. It is, it's a vast area, it's a cemetery, which early 20th century, when the first excavations had started, and archaeologists discovered tombs. 2 of them were so very impressive, and because there were kingdoms in Cyprus in the ancient times, the archaeologists believe that what they discovered at the time, they were tombs of kings. These tombs were badly looted, and so when they managed to find some relics, a little bit, some jewelry, some bones especially, they carbon dated, and they finally were very disappointed because they realized that they discovered tombs of very rich people, but no kings were ever buried here. So what we will be doing, we can walk further down to these 2 most impressive tombs. We will visit, we will talk about them. We will visit together a 3rd one, which is a little bit different to the 2 that we will be seeing. And after that, you will have your free time to walk around and explore the place. Yes?
Yeah, good.
All right, this way.
So the people buried here had the same philosophy as the Egyptians, did they? Take riches with them to the afterlife? Taking riches with them to the afterlife. You said the tombs were plundered.
It wasn't exactly. I mean, okay, there was an Egyptian influence at the time during this period. But I mean, okay, burying the dead were not exactly buried like the Egyptians. They were offering them gifts, yes, but they were never mummified.
No.
It was just
the fact that they had valuables in the tomb suggests that they wanted to take their wealth with them.
Though, this was always done, always, from even long before. Long before the Egyptian influence or anything, it was always a custom.
So there was no inheritance then, down to the children of the family wealth.
I will explain. Okay, let's see when everybody comes. Okay, that boat, there's a reef there, and the boat, it's been sitting there from 2002. It was winter, very strong winds. The ship was carrying timber, and the wind practically threw the ship on the reef. They tried to remove it, they couldn't. They removed the cargo and they just left it there. You're welcome. Each tombs, they're very impressive tombs. A cemetery then, just like the cemeteries nowadays, is where all people, when they die, are buried, whether they are poor, rich, or middle class. So we can see the rock, first of all, which is very soft. It's a mixture of a bit of sandstone. It's mostly limestone. And with erosion over the thousands of years, small caves were created. So when people died and they were poor, and their relatives did not have the money to have for them a proper tomb, they used to bury them in those very small tombs there, the caves. You can look at this one though, and you can tell that people have carved the rock and they made tombs. So this might have been for middle class people. So to give you now the whole idea of what was happening. Firstly, to start with the city kingdoms. The city kingdoms were established end of the 13th century BC by the Achaean and Mycenaean Greeks, they had excellent relations, and these relations started with the trade, with the exchanging of goods. So when in Greece, in some of the kingdoms, people did not agree with the political situation, and as people had good relations with Cyprus, they chose to live and they came here to settle down. This way and this way. Okay, you cannot see much from there. It's best if you come this way. And as you look down, and you can see this underground tomb, that's how it always was, carved on the rock underground. And there was a staircase leading down below. So it's this one and another one back there. Of the two very, very similar they are, only this one has been a little bit restored, as you can see, to give an idea to the visitors about how the tombs looked like originally. And yes, they were open air, heavy Doric pillars, as you see, and the only decoration is the triglyphs, what we call in triglypha, triglyphs, yeah? So this is the only decoration. It's actually a colonnaded portico, as we see, with chambers. So when people died, and it was all members of the family that were buried here, big families, so firstly they would start burying in the first chamber. When the first chamber was full of tombs, they had to go on to the second and now dry. And I must say that after the unsystematic excavations and then the systematic in the early 1930s, the only residents around here are just pigeons. Yeah. And if you look around the walls or on the upper part of the portico, you can see there's plenty of erosion. We know from the archaeologists at least that these walls were painted once. But if you look up now, all you see is black color. So after the earthquake, when people started to live here, it was cold and they had to light fires. So that is, and with one way for destroying the wall paintings. And then another, the damp, the weather conditions. It's very soft, this stone. So again, with erosion, that is how we no longer see colors on the walls. Sorry. That's a good colour, isn't it? Yeah, I'm sorry.
Soot from the fires that
Yeah.
yeah. Very nice.
Very interesting. Should have got a torch.
Yes.
I don't know if you can see, I just might make my own shadow, I think. Yeah.
So if you stand on that side, you get a bit more light into
Thank
the...
you. Yeah, sure. See what happens. Not that one. So, no, what does that mean? Like I said, because it's different to the two that we have seen.
When the people die, they put them in a coffin
Yeah.
and they hang them on the cliff face for a year. Then they put them in a tub.
But why is it that? I mean, gosh, it reminds me of the custom here, but you know, this is happening out in the air, yes? So, well, it becomes more. Sorry, I will say that, but I'm laughing because I think of what they do mostly in the big island when they take the octopus and they put it out to dry, you know. Really, I mean, it's a complicated also, and you can't really yes. Seeing what we're saying.
Or 4 meters every year.
Okay, now you've got the extra 20 minutes and you can just look around and you can just do as you wish. 10 o'clock, back on the bus, please. Thank you.
Oh, so the 20 minutes all back to the coach.
Yeah, basically.
Sorry? Carrying them to the basement of the archaeological museum. in Pathos.
Oh, that's where all the written out. I was going to ask.
Yes.
I won't look at mine seem like that long. It doesn't last long.
Arctic excavations. He kept finding so much that he had to ask his brother Alessandro to come to Cyprus to help him. And when he found out that British rule was about to start in Cyprus, he tried to sell what he had in his possession to the British Museum. No luck there. So he then decided to load everything on 2 ships to take them back to the United States. When we talk about everything, or especially the archaeologists know better, they mean 35,000 items gold, silver, and small pottery. One of those two ships must have sunk somewhere in the Mediterranean or the Atlantic, because only one arrived safely in New York, and then Luigi Palma di Cesnola sold everything to the Metropolitan Museum, and he became the curator. There's a huge wing at the Metropolitan Museum, which I personally visited, and all artifacts there are from Cyprus. There are also little labels there with the place of origin. When I went there, though, I was 14 years old. I had never traveled in my life, and it was the first time to visit such a museum. So when I saw the place of origin saying Cyprus, I thought it was somewhere, it's a name, another name of a place, and I never thought about my own country, because nobody talks about it. As everything, there's a law which says that everything which was taken out of the country before the antiquity law was enacted, we cannot claim. So we hear very often Greece claiming the Elgin marbles. But with us, we know that there is nothing we can do. Roman rule, lovely mosaic floors, lovely designs, scenes from mythology, and I do hope you like stories. But I need to say that from the moment we arrived there, there's a little bit of walking to do, and of course there are some steps which are quite wide, steps, to get up to the ground level. So if any of you, for some reason, are not interested, please let us know before you leave the bus, so we know how many people we pay for when I go to pay the entrance fees. That's one thing. But yes, we need to know so that we can make sure that we know where everybody is. Usually we gather, but we start returning back to the bus around from 12:30, so by 1:45 we get ready to go.
Give her a while.
So if you choose to come back on your own, over here you find the facilities again. And also, before we leave, again, even after we go out, before we leave, if anyone is interested in coming in, they might ask you, and you say that you have been before, and they will allow you to enter and use the phone.
Very big discounts.
They would ask you because it's obvious, isn't it?
I thought it was your pet.
What's the reasonable price?
As far as I know, Chem Rentals is it's like Ryanair is the locals, but they are good cars. Chem Rentals.
Yeah. What sort of price?
I don't know, but it's what we know as Cypriot is that it's one of the no. Okay, I think, I mean, seeing not all that many buses out there, I believe it's best if we go firstly to see the house of Dionysus, because it's all inside. And when we are done, at least if any other groups arrive, it will be a lot easier for us because there are not going to be all that many in there. At the moment they are just doing restorations on the existing ones over there. Yeah. Because obviously they were expensive because they covered a lot, but some were never covered. So they are now ready to start the restorations and then put the canopy and stuff here. This side, firstly, but allow me to say that if any of you people like to be more independent around this place and you don't want to follow the route, you don't have to. It's just that that's the way we have to go if we're all of us together. So firstly, over here, and then we go towards the other way. What I would like to say is that those of you who are here, standing here now, you can look down and you can see that this one floor is very different to all the rest of the mosaics. This is different because they don't use, or they have not used tesserae, cubes, but they have used pebbles because this was not here. It was not found in this house, it was found elsewhere, and they removed it and brought it here for protection. So this dates from the Hellenistic period, from 2nd century BC. And all the rest, we said, from after 58 BC, which Roman rule started. Now, I mentioned earlier that we see the different scenes and a lot of them have stories behind them, mythological stories. And if you have a good look here, there is a woman, first of all, over there, and then we see down below dogs, we see a fish, we see a lobster tail, and on either side, we see the dolphins. So the story was all about a young man. We don't see him in this picture. The young man's name was Pathos, and Pathos was very much in love with Scylla. It's all Greek names now, yes? So he was very much in love with Scylla, but Scylla had no feelings for Pathos. So Pathos decided to go to a witch to prepare the elixir of love so that Scylla would fall in love with him. But the witch was very much in love with Pathos, so she gave him something different, and it was a liquid which she told him to pour it into the sea where Scylla used to go every day to swim, and that would change everything. So Pathos did what he was told to do. He went behind the bush, he sat there waiting for Scylla to arrive, which she did. She entered the water, and when the water was up to her waist, immediately she turned into a beast. So we see that from the waist up, she's still a normal woman. We see from waist down how she turned into part of her being dogs or fish with a lobster tail. And according to mythology, after that, she decided to leave, and she went to live in the Sicilian Sea together with the dolphins, but she used to sink every ship passing her way because of her anger. And archaeologists believe that what she's holding in her hand, it might be the mast of a ship that she had sunk. And some people say, what about the cross? That is not really a cross, just happened, it looks like a cross, but it must have been something like a trident, a way similar to a trident. So this from 2nd century BC, unlike the rest, which are from Roman rule. So the next one is this small scene here.
We say in Greek, what we say, when a woman receives
and only her echo remained. One day, Narcissus, sitting at the banks of the stream, he saw his reflection in the water and he fell in love with himself. And he wouldn't even move from there. He sat there gazing at himself day and night until he almost died. And there was the goddess of beauty and love, Aphrodite, or Venus in Latin. She took pity on Narcissus and turned him into a flower. So they're well known. Narcissus, or daffodil, as you know. Now, right behind us, over here, this big room, the most important room in this house, called in Greek, triclinion. I've seen it many times. You may go and take your photos. Triclinion. Two Greek words, tria, which means three, and klini. Klini is the ancient Greek word for a bed or a long couch. So the triclinion was actually the dining room. All the guests were coming in, and the tables as well as the low couches were placed in a U shape. So where you are now, stay where you are now and come around and straight what's happening. Now, in a U shape, the first zone, they placed the low couches. The second zone in a U shape, they were placing the low tables with all the food. And they made some sort of a sandwich. It's called the sandwich way, putting it back into the plaster. So originally, all these mosaics, all these colors, were actually brought from different rocks on the highest peaks of Troodos Mountains. But when they did the restoration back in the 1960s, they had to use artificial coloring. Now, Dionysos. The first time we see him, it's over here. This scene, which is known as the title is The Return of Dionysos from India, where he had been on an expedition. So we see Dionysos in the middle on his chariot, and the chariot is drawn by leopards, not horses, because when he went to India, it was horses. When he came back from India, he brought wild animals, and of course, no such animals existed in Greece, so he had to bring along the person to tame the animals, which is the person with the dark skin down on his knees holding a leather strap. Behind Dionysos, there's the person carrying wine, as Dionysos was the god of wine. And behind this person called Pan, or Panos in Greek, he was half a goat, half a person. Dionysos brought from India presents and incense. So we see these two women here, and another one over there, carrying incense and the presents. But he also brought slaves. So we see one slave here, one slave on the other. down somewhere around here.
Move along down the bus.
A little bit further down, this way. Are you okay? Some of you might choose to stand on this side. Okay, I think now everybody can see. No, we still have. Okay, now looking at the first scene, where we have two people, the young woman called Thisbe and the man called Pyramos. Now the story was all about these two young people who were very much in love, but their parents, coming from a hostile family, would not allow them to see each other, and more, they did not want them to get married. But these two were so very much in love that they always used to meet in secret places. Oh, most of the times it was in the forest, in the shade of the mulberry tree. So that one day, Thisbe arrived first, and standing in the shade of the tree, waiting for Pyramos to arrive, she saw a wild animal that came around, and there was blood coming up from the animal's mouth, possibly because this animal had killed a smaller animal before. So when Thisbe saw this, she panicked. She ran to hide, and her veil fell off the shoulder. The animal took the veil in its mouth, as you see, and stained it with blood. But after a while, the animal left. The veil was still on the ground, full of blood stains. A little bit later, Pyramos arrived. He saw the veil and he recognized it, but he saw all that blood, so he believed that an animal had killed Thisbe. So he had no reason to live after that. Using his sword, he took his own life. A little bit later, Thisbe came out from her hideout, and seeing Pyramos dead, again she believed without Pyramos there was no reason to live. So using his sword, she took her own life. So this is the scene that Shakespeare was inspired from and wrote what? Romeo and Juliet. Now come a little bit further this way. Now the first part of this whole scene here, the first part has no story. We see one more time Dionysos. So with a well-known wreath on his head, with the vine leaves and the bunches of grapes, he's holding a bunch of grapes in his hands. And on the other side, beautiful nymph Acme, wearing exactly the same wreath on her head, but she's drinking wine from a flask. The actual story starts here with this middle-aged man whose name was Icarius, not Icaros, Icarius. Icarius was the person that gave hospitality to Dionysus for a long time, and finally, when Dionysus was about to go, he taught Icarius how to make wine, but he told him that if he was to drink wine, he had to drink in moderation. So Dionysus left, and after a while, Icarius had made his own wine. He was so very happy, he loaded the flasks on a cart to take to the town to sell to the different people. On his way to the town, though, Icarius met some of his very good friends, and because he was so happy, he wanted to share his happiness with his friends. He offered them wine. There is an inscription over the heads of the two men, which is in ancient Greek, and it says, "I proti inon piontes," the first wine drinkers. So they had some of the wine, they liked it, they kept having a little bit more and more and more until they got dizzy, and only then they believed that Icarius was trying to poison them. So they killed him, only because he forgot to tell them to drink in moderation. So this thing that we know now as no drink and drive, they had it back then as well, with a different meaning, of course. Now if you come further this way, there's plenty of room. but the other one on that side, so you might just get over there as well. There's plenty of room on this side as well. Okay, now, this other scene we have here, we have the young woman, Amimone, that was her name, Amimone, and Neptune, Poseidon on that side, and Cupid in the middle. So mythology has it that in Greece, it was drought, and King Danaos had asked his 50 daughters to go in search of water. One of the 50 daughters of King Danaos was Amimone. She decided to go all by herself in the forest, where she used to go quite often, and she would try to do two things at the same time, looking for a spring of water, but also hunting. So while she was walking in the forest, she saw a deer. She tried to kill the deer using one of her arrows, but the arrow missed the deer and hit the trunk of a tree. And there was a bit of noise from, with the branches of the tree. And there was a satyr sleeping in the shade of that tree. And all of a sudden, the satyr got up and started to chase Amimone. So she was running in the forest when all of a sudden, she saw Poseidon. And it was love at first sight. And we know that from Cupid, which is between the two. So what Poseidon did, he asked Cupid, Eros in Greek, to hold the parasol to protect Amimone from the strong sun. He chased the satyr away, and then he returned back to show Amimone the spring of water. That's why we see also the water jug over there. Now, usually, when we read mythology, it's all bad news. It's all a very sad ending. Yes, you might say it's a happy ending, or a good ending if not happy. Now over here we have another god, Apollo. God Apollo, he was the god of music and the god of light. And God Apollo was very much in love with Daphne, but Daphne had no feelings for Apollo. So every time Apollo was chasing Daphne, Daphne was running away to hide, but Apollo, being a god, he was always able to find her. So this is the scene where one day Apollo was chasing Daphne and she kept running in the forest when all of a sudden she saw her father, who was river god Pinos, and she begged her father to save her. So immediately Daphne started to root in the ground, and she then became a tree. We all know that Daphne is a name. It's a name in Greek, it's a name in many different languages. But Daphne is also the Greek word for the laurel tree, the bay tree. So after that, when Daphne became a tree, Daphne, the laurel tree, became the sacred tree of god Apollo. In near Limassol, there is an ancient site, which is the temple of god Apollo. And in fact, before the drought problem started, all you could see, or the only trees you could see in that area, it was just the Daphne tree, or the laurel tree. The next one is over here. And if you like, you may gather Hippolytos. Phaedra, the young woman over there, Hippolytos, the young man next to her. And there is a third person that we don't see in this scene, and that was Theseus. Theseus, or Theseus. Theseus was married, and with his first wife, he had a son. That was Hippolytos. The first wife died when Hippolytos was still a baby, but Theseus did not want to get married because he was not sure whether his other wife would be a good mother for his son. So he waited until Hippolytos was already a handsome young man, as you see, And then he decided to say yes to a second marriage. So when he got married the second time to Phaedra, he was away from home when he went to visit some friends, so his son was not present at the wedding. His second wife knew that her husband, he says, had a son back at home. What she didn't know was the age of her stepson. She met her stepson only when she went to live in her new husband's home. And she then realized that her stepson had the same age as her. She fell in love with the stepson. So one day, as Theseus was away, Phaedra sent a little love note to Hippolytus confessing her love to him. So you see Hippolytus holding that diptych, that little love note there. But if you look at his face, it's a very skeptical face, very serious face. And he never wanted to create problems between his father and the stepmother. But he kept thinking of what to do. While he was thinking, long time went by, and Theseus finally came home. And because Phaedra had no idea about what Hippolytus was going to do, she decided to lie. So she ran outside, and she was crying, and she told Theseus that her son, his son had made a pass at her. And of course Theseus was very angry at his son, and he prayed to God for justice. Now, something that Hippolytus was doing every morning, he was to go horse riding near the sea. So the next morning, he did exactly the same. But as he was riding the horse, a beast came out from the sea. The horse was frightened, and Hippolytus fell off the horse, and he got killed. Phaedra, who knew that it was all her fault and she was guilty, she committed suicide. Now we see Eros, we see Cupid, this time holding the torch of love next to the heart of Phaedra. So poor Hippolytus was innocent, yet he died in a way with his father's wishes, because the father had no idea of the truth. That was one thing. The next thing that we see, and we know that Hippolytus was innocent, it was the dog. The dog there, it's allegoric. It all has to do with the loyalty of the dog towards his master or masters. They're always very loyal, the dogs. So that's how very loyal Hippolytus was to his father. Was incorporated, rather, on the palace of King Minos. Many young men, strong young men, tried to kill the Minotaur, but no one was able to. Theseus decided to go ahead with it. And when he went to Crete, he told King Minos why he was there, the reason that he was there. King Minos believed that so many young men came to kill the Minotaur, no one was able to. This is not going to kill the Minotaur either, so I will throw a party for him. So, nighttime, as they were all having their dinner in the palace, Ariadne, the daughter of King Minos, was passing from there, and she saw Theseus, this young man, and she fell in love with him. So after dinner, she went into his room and she told him that she was willing to help him. If he managed to kill the Minotaur, at least there would be a way of coming back, because the labyrinth was really a very big problem for someone to come out. So she told him she was willing to help him, and if he came back from the labyrinth, he was to take her away from Crete. And Theseus agreed to that. So the next morning they both met outside the labyrinth, and Ariadne was holding a ball of thread which she tied on one end on his finger. So Theseus started walking in the labyrinth, in those narrow alleys, and he killed the Minotaur. So following the thread, he then returned, he came outside. Theseus kept his promise of taking Ariadne with him. And at this point I would like to say, and I'm sure you know, that each mythological story has many different versions. The first version of the story is all about Theseus, who, when they left from Crete, it was bad weather conditions, and they kept going round and round in circles in the sea. This took many months. In the meantime, Theseus and Ariadne had a relationship, and Ariadne became pregnant. And the boat, the first version says, the boat reached Pathos, Akamas Peninsula, and that's where Ariadne gave birth to a baby boy, which they named Akamas. So this is the reason why it's known as Akamas Peninsula. The second version, though, the well-known version, says that before Theseus left from Athens, his father, King Aegeus, told him that the sails of the boat should be black, because his father never believed that he was going to be able to kill the Minotaur. So he wanted the sails to be black. And he told his son that he was going to go every day at the edge of a cliff in Piraeus, waiting to see the boat arriving. If he killed the Minotaur, Theseus had to change the sails to white, so the king, his father, would know. But they were all, the sailors and Theseus, so very happy they completely forgotten to change the sails from black to white. So as they were all heading towards Athens, towards Piraeus, King Aegeus, standing at the edge of the cliff, he saw from far away the boat, and the sails were black. So he believed his son was killed by the Minotaur. So he just fell off the edge of the cliff into the sea. And the sea, I'm sure you know, the Aegean Sea, exactly. Anyway, this scene now is we see the young man in the middle, Theseus, and the face of we see the bull and the leg only of the Minotaur. On the left-hand side, that person which represents it's a representation of the labyrinth. Labyrinth, Theseus, Minotaur, and on the upper side, on the right, the young woman who is a representation of Crete. Well, on the left-hand side, Ariadne, King Minos' daughter. Any questions or queries?